Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today we are going to take a spoiler-free look at Chapter 90 of Kaiju number 8. Man, here we are in Chapter 90. How's that going? As usual, this chapter just blasted past. We got a full 23 pages. We got a little bit of extra page this chapter. And this is one of those chapters, just classic shonen. I've already gone back and reread it a few times, looking for hints of what might be coming. And what really struck my eye was on page 13. And this is going to be something silly. I'm probably just because I'm quite the nerd, but I read the Viz manga chapter. I don't know if it's correct, but I consider it the more accurate translation. I don't know why I'm a little bit biased against Manga Plus, but there it is for you. But I did notice something very, very interesting. There's a panel on page 13 where a character says it's exuding in this fight, and that word exuding kind of jumped off the page at me. It actually jerked me out of the story. Now, I have a fairly large vocabulary. I would say significantly larger than the average reader. So if a word kind of surprises me in context, it's probably not the best word to have in that context, because the point of telling a story, each word needs to flow into the other. You shouldn't have a phrase that's so fancy and so delightful that it removes the person from the story. The famous humor writer Patrick Manis gave a really good example of this. He wrote a story in which he described somebody wading through ankle-deep puddles of sunlight. And one of his readers said how delightful that phrase was and how much it struck him. And when he got that feedback, Patrick Manis considered it negative feedback, something that he had done wrong, because he didn't want any one phrase to distract from the story as a whole. Now, that's not the principle of every author. Some authors really do like really excellent phraseology, but brilliant phrases that strike your mind are kind of a hallmark of poetry. That's what you want in a poem. The point of prose is for the words themselves to be invisible, to convey meaning in the simplest possible point. And so I would say the fact that this one word was so striking that it distracted me from the rest of the story is very telling. So I'm like, now, exuding. It's exuding in this fight. The context is not available in that single panel. You have to go down to the following panels to talk about what's exuding. And that was curious too, and that broke the flow of the story. So I got curious. I'm like, well, what did Manga Plus have to say? And so I went over to Manga Plus, and they said his fighting instead of its exuding. And I thought, you know what? As much as I generally prefer the Viz translation, this Manga Plus is actually the better translation. So it's exuding in this fight doesn't really tell you anything about what's going on. All you know is that the character is observing something. There's no clear mental image. But the Manga Plus translation instead says his fighting reveals everything. So, and I really think that this is the better sentence, but it doesn't sound as fancy. Why not? Well, if you notice in the Viz translation, you have exude, the fancy starts the sentence. So you have exude and then fight. It exudes in this fight. We don't know what it is until 3 panels later. Now, the other one says, his fighting reveals everything. Fight, again, is a Germanic word root, and reveals is a Latin root word. But the focus of the sentence, the subject of the sentence is clear. His fighting is revealing something. We still don't know what it's revealing until later on, but we now have a clear mental image in our head. More importantly, instead of a mysterious word and knowing nothing about the story, we have a clear mental image of what's going on in the story. So I really think, at least in this case, Manga Plus chose the better sentence to lead with a blunt Germanic word and then follow up with the fancy Latin verb reveals. So the funny thing about English is that English has 2 distinct lexicons. That means we have all of the words from 2 completely different languages. Now, all languages on Earth originated from one ancestral language. And that one language branches out into a long, complicated family tree of languages. English is technically on the Germanic branch. The Anglo-Saxons invaded England a long, long time ago, and the English were speaking essentially Proto-German. But then France invaded them in 1000 AD and brought their Latin with them. And for centuries, the rich people of England spoke French, which is the Latin root and has the complete Latin vocabulary. And the poor people of England, the conquered peasants, still spoke that version of Germanic. And over time, the classes in English merged and flowed. They were never extremely static. England had a rather unique system where extremely high levels of skill provided a second aristocracy that could marry into the original aristocracy, and so these two languages merged. So, but still in English, if you're speaking fancy, you speak with the Latin vocabulary, the French vocabulary. This is why we have beef and pork that comes from cows and pigs. Cow and pig are the Germanic root words for the animals that the peasants tended. Beef and pork are the fancy French Latin root words for the meat that the rich people ate. So I've been kind of trying to put my finger on why the Viz and Manga Plus translations are so different. In general, Viz has been using the fancier Latinized vocabulary from English, whereas Manga Plus has been using the simpler, blunter Germanic root for English. Now, you'll notice both sentences use one Germanic root word and one Latin root word. But Viz manga put in this particular case, I actually can't recall whether this is a habitual thing with them. Viz puts the fancy Latin word first and supports it with the Germanic word. It exudes in this fight. Manga Plus puts the simple Germanic words first. His fighting reveals everything and follows it up with the fancy Latin word as a supporting word. And this is just very interesting. In this case, I would say that the Manga Plus translation does the scene more justice. You know what's going on. It keeps your brain in the story. It doesn't surprise you. It doesn't startle you. It makes the story flow more smoothly. But the Viz, on the other hand, jerks you out of the story. It exudes in this fight. What exudes? You don't know. It's startling. It questions you. It breaks you out of the story and does not give your brain a clear mental image to complement the pictures that you're seeing on the page. And I just thought that was really, really interesting. Other than that, again, this is all spoiler-free, but this chapter was just a rock-solid Shonen Jump manga chapter. No, there is nothing groundbreaking here. There is nothing that is going to make this Shonen Jump manga stand out from every Shonen Jump manga. It's a fight scene. It's wham, bam, punch, pow, rock'em sock'em robots. Excuse me. And it's like a good solid cup of tea. You make that cup of tea or coffee in the morning, you make it the same way you make it every morning, and it still makes you happy when the caffeine seeps into your blood. That's what this chapter was like. But what do you think, my wonderful viewers? Do you agree that this was a rock solid cup of joe kind of Shonen Jump manga chapter? What do you think? In your observation, does Manga Plus consistently use more Germanic-based sentences as compared to Viz's Latin-based sentences? Or is that an exception that I just noticed? Because generally, I think the Shonen Jump translation flows better mentally than the I think the Viz translation flows better mentally than the Manga Plus translation. But what have you observed? Hit that like and subscribe button. Go check out Indiegogo and Kickstarter to get a copy of my book, Flying Sparks, Dragons, Aliens, and Things That Go Boom in the Night. I have aliens that are essentially kaiju in there, so if you like Shonen Jump, you will like Flying Sparks. Also, announcement. You guys are the first to hear it. I have finally gotten my book Dying Embers off the exclusive deal with Amazon, and it's now available on Barnes & Noble, Google, Kobo by Rakuten, and I always forget the fourth one. Anyway, go check out the books at the link below the video, hit that like and subscribe, and peace out, my wonderful viewers.
Drake McCarty should have died when the flash flood shattered his leg, but something defied the very laws of nature to shield him from the force of the storm. Sworn to keep a secret he doesn't understand, Drake is swept up in a world where trees walk, mountains dance, and stars sing of war. Flying Sparks, 100,000 words of science fantasy adventure set in the Dying Embers universe. Two worlds collide in this science fiction novel, available on Indiegogo for the month of July 2023.